Hey up everybody, my name's Joshua Morrison, director of Jonny Mozza's Lessons in Confidence. Today I want to talk a little bit about feeling like you're getting worse, right, with time. Right, so I started this channel about a year ago, right, and it's gone through its ups and downs in terms of quality, right, and like with everything I do, it feels like as time goes on, I get better and better and better, and then I seem to get worse and worse and worse. And I know it's all in my head and that it's not actually me getting worse, but it doesn't stop the fact that I feel like I'm getting worse. Right? Another example would be with work, where you feel like maybe you're not progressing in your career, right? Or maybe that you used to be more outgoing socially, right? These are all things that you used to be better than you currently are, and that makes you feel bad and it keeps you up at night. It's kind of the opposite of, you know, when there's that basic cliche of like, oh God, I used to be so cringy, like in the past. It is you know, my brain recollecting all the terrible things that I've done that aren't actually that bad. You know, there's that, but this is kind of the opposite of that. This is kind of the brain going, oh God, I used to be so good at things and now I'm not. What's going on, right? And I'll try and get to the bottom of what's going on in this video. Right? So, with you know, any pursuit that you might have, you're going to come across challenges, hurdles, right? Obstacles, right? You're going to get off the ground running, right? You're going to keep going for quite a while, slowly going uphill as things get a little bit harder, but you're getting into the rhythm of things. You're doing pretty decent. And then at one point, as you're climbing, right, as you're running, right, it's going to hit a wall, and you're going to have to figure out how to get over the wall, right? You figure out how to get over the wall, right, and you keep going, right? And eventually you get to another one of these, right? And it becomes easier and easier to climb these walls, right? So eventually, instead of it being like that, suddenly now you're just doing this, boing, like that, right? And now as you get better at overcoming these smaller obstacles, larger obstacles will make their presence known. As you start to more easily accomplish your goals and more easily get past the hurdles that, you know, life is throwing at you and that maybe your brain is throwing at you, you will come across larger obstacles and harder things to accomplish, right? So eventually you're running up the hill, the thing, right? And eventually you get something like this, right? How in the hell are you going to do that? That's not going to work. All right, maybe I'll try something a bit different. Didn't work either, right? So, how can we overcome this big obstacle, right? Because I managed to come over these little obstacles, right? Managed to do that fairly easily, but that same thing doesn't work here, right? So I need to get around this, or I need to level myself up in some capacity, right? And so because I've overcome all these smaller obstacles, I'm good at dealing with those. I'm getting good at dealing with those, but these big ones are still getting in the way. And by the end of the video, we're going to be able to overcome that big obstacle, whatever that might be, right? So, with, say, doing these videos, I've been overcoming a lot of problems. I started off doing them very, very quickly, doing 2 a day regularly with no backlog. And I did that for about 3 months. And that kind of wore me down. And so I reduced my upload schedule. And with that came a lack of motivation. I started to feel like I'd done everything, right? I talked about everything that there was to talk about. And then I managed to overcome that. Somehow, right? I think internally, mentally, and I managed to do another massive batch of videos and started doing 2 a day again. And then I kind of ran into the same problem, right? But in a different sort of way. It was the same kind of burnout, but more existential in nature, right? And I felt like I'd done this before. And so I was able to overcome it a little bit easier than I had previously, right? Here's a good example. It's a bit embarrassing. It's a bit sort of like, oh, I can't believe I used to be so cringy in my past. It's kind of like that. So when I had my first girlfriend, right? It was my first girlfriend, but I wasn't her first boyfriend, right? And I remember I was like 17, and this used to eat me up inside. I was so full of insecurities, right? And it really, like, I didn't know how to deal with it, right? I knew it was kind of dumb, but I didn't know how to deal with the brain being like that, right? When I got to my second girlfriend, right, didn't have that issue whatsoever, right? Because I'd overcome the challenge that had come before, right? And now it had just become a small obstacle, right, that I could easily overcome, right? Rather than it being something that's a huge obstacle that we still need to figure out, right? So obviously I managed to figure it out. And the only way I could explain how I figured it out is just one day I just woke up and it stopped being an issue for me, right? But that doesn't feel like it's very satisfying from your point of view, the viewer. Oh yeah, one day you're gonna wake up and you're just gonna solve all your problems. I'm sure it will happen for you at some point, but right now you're in the now, and you're not. Those problems aren't solved. They're still there and they're growing, and you need to deal with them, right? And obviously, when you wake up and they're solved, you still need to solve them, right? It's not like it all happens in your sleep, right? With that example I gave, sometimes it's more logistical. Maybe like, trying to set up a new business, or trying to pursue your dream career, or maybe trying to get a better job in your career, or anchoring for a promotion, any of those sort of things. So what can you do to accomplish those larger goals, right? Because as time goes on, right, as you go from your teens, right, which you're full of energy because you've got your whole life ahead of you, right, to your 20s, where you're full of energy, but you've got your whole life ahead of you, and you've got this little bit of experience from your teens, right, that you're able to apply. So you're going from that into your late 20s, where you're starting to slow down a little bit, and then into your 30s, where you're starting to slow down a little bit, and then into your 40s, when you're starting to slow down a little bit. And the eagerness of the whole world being ahead of you is instead replaced with experience, right? So as you go through life, you overcome a load of different hurdles and obstacles, and you need to figure out how to accomplish all of them, because they might all realistically be like that, right? But to you, some of them feel like that, some of them feel like that, some of them feel like that, right? They're all different. Every obstacle that every person will come across is different. I mean, think about it, right? How many types of problem are there, right? There's financial problems, there's emotional problems, physical health problems, right? Social problems, no one likes you, right? Career problems, right? You're working in McDonald's, right? There's loads of problems that you can have. There's philosophical, existential problems that you can't even quantify. There's so many different kinds of problem within those basic genres of problem that I've given you. And then within those, there's going to be things that are specific to your life, right? Maybe you're working at McDonald's, but you don't mind it because you're getting a fair bit of money. You happen to be living with your parents. They're not charging you any rent, so you're actually doing quite decently. You're saving up quite a lot of money, and you're getting a lot of physical activity. And you could cancel your gym membership because now you're working a physical job. So you're getting fit and you're getting loads of money, right? And you're 17, so everyone is like thinking, "Wow, you're so successful. You work at McDonald's," right? Compare that to someone who's 35, living on their own, right? Working at McDonald's is going to be a different level of problem for different people, right? And the same can go with, say, cardiovascular problems. Maybe because your heart's in a better condition when you're at a young age compared to when you're at an old age, right? So the same problem might be at different sizes for different people, right? Different people are more able to overcome different things. We all have our specialties. Therapists are pretty good at emotional problems, but they can't sort your heart out, right? Heart surgeons, right? They can't solve heartbreak. However, a relationship counsellor, right, or a trauma counsellor probably could, especially if it was like a really nasty breakup, or maybe she was a bitch. So you've got loads of different ways of solving problems, right? And there's loads of different kinds of problem, and all of this kind of comes together, right, to make the journey of life, to make that journey, fulfilling in the short term and the long term, right? So, and there's different avenues to your journey of life, because, you trying to, get closer to a person, relationship-wise, is a different part of the journey to you trying to get a better job and be the manager at McDonald's rather than just a, chef, right? So you got two different avenues of the same life journey. Maybe you meet your wife when you're working at McDonald's and she's also working at McDonald's, right? And then that splits off. And suddenly you start going at dates at Burger King, right? And then you go back to hers. And then suddenly you start going to hers more often. And then you start sleeping at hers because she actually lives nearer to the McDonald's that you work at than you do, right? And then maybe she gets another job somewhere, right? and then, you know, suddenly those life paths are going in completely different directions, right? And then maybe you break up, right? But it's okay, because now you don't work together, so it's all right. But, you know, this place doesn't feel the same without her, you know? You're doing this, and, you know, you were garnering for a promotion, you were talking to your manager about possibly becoming an assistant manager, but now it just kind of feels like you don't want that, you know? You don't want to be here anymore in this environment, you know? The chip oil fucking reminds you of her, and, like, you know, how I used to make that joke about the chip oil and that fella who, you know, dunked his hand in it for a joke or whatever, you know. But obviously that didn't happen, right? But, you know, the journey of life is complicated, and that's just one basic example that's completely fictional, right? I've never worked in McDonald's, right? Worked at Wetherspoons, but I didn't meet anyone there. So you've got the journey of life, right? And you're on a portion of this journey of life. Say you're at a hard bit, say you're at this overpass here, right? Because you're not making any progress, it might feel like you're getting worse because you're not going up, right? You're not progressing, right? You're stood here trying to solve the problem ahead of you, right? And you feel like you're falling behind because you're not moving, right? But in a way you are moving. You're moving mentally, trying to figure out how you can get up this, right? And if you can figure out how to get up this, you're going to be doing something decent. If you can get to the top of this, right, you can look down over this big abyss and see the whole of your journey before you, right? Obviously you already can, but you'll have the, you know, the ability of foresight, right? I mean, recently I've climbed my own version of this when I completed my debut film, A Sheffield Psychedelic, and released it. And having done that, I was able to look back over the entire production and sort of see what the fundamental problem was. I was able to see the forest that I was lost in, right? And see that the entire thing was kind of flawed from the get-go, right? I was able to see that after the fact because I had been able to overcome the obstacle, right? And you know, various things I was able to see what I did right and what I did wrong that I wasn't able to see in the moment, right? There are certain parts of the film that are better than I thought they were when I was editing them, and there's certain parts that are worse than I thought they were because, you know, in the moment I thought they were really good, they were the best bit of the film, it turns out they weren't. So, you know, the journey of life takes you in weird directions, right? And you still got to get up this, right? Because you're here at this bypass and you're going to come across more of these. So it's not just about, you know, desperately clawing to try and get up this one, right? And just carrying on this, using stamina and endurance just to carry this on forever, right? This might work once, right? When you're 20, but it's not going to work for the rest of your life. You need to be able to more easily overcome these difficulties, right? And this can be anything, but I think in particular, a problem like this tends to be emotional, right? They tend to be emotional because our brains aren't rational, no matter how much we want them to be rational, right? They think they're rational as well, which is the worst part, right? And you need to try and figure out how to get over this. And I would say the best way of doing that is, you know, you do all your bog standard stuff, try and improve your life materially, as in, you know, improve your health, right? Improve your routine, get out there in the world and see new things, and see new people, get new experiences, right? Meditate, all that sort of shit, right? Do all of that, because that's all good for you. But I'd also say, you know, and also try and learn stuff about the world, watch documentaries, read books, all that sort of stuff. That will help, you know, to help get your brain working. You know, it's almost like brain exercise. You know, when you work out a lot, right, you feel good. Right? I'm not working out to try and gain muscle in particular. I'm working out to improve my vitality, to improve my endurance, and to improve my mental health as well as my physical health. I'm more interested in solving like cardiovascular, not problems necessarily, but just, you know, making myself feel good, right? And going to the gym helps, and working out helps, right? I want to start reading more and start doing all that kind of stuff because that will help my brain feel good, right? Recently, I watched a documentary about Hitler, right? And I was learning stuff, right? I learned about a plot to kill Hitler. And while it was happening, there was one moment where I felt like a little spick in my brain, right? And there's probably that's a neuron firing, right? It's a neuron making a connection with another neuron, right? And connecting things in my brain. I felt the learning happen, right? And I thought that was pretty neat, right? So if I can make that happen more often, that'll be good, because it felt quite good when it happened, physically as well as mentally. So that all allowed me to be more comfortable, overcoming the tough obstacles in life, right? If you can improve yourself, right, and if you can run faster and you can jump higher, metaphorically, right, you can overcome these obstacles more easily, right? I remember when I made my first short film, right, it was a huge undertaking, right? Second one, right, was actually materially a larger undertaking, but it felt like a smaller project. My third one was an even larger project physically and materially than the second one and the first one, but it felt so much easier, right? Does that make sense? As time goes on, the hard things in life will feel easier, and then new hard things will come around, and that cycle will go on probably forever. And especially as the world evolves, new technologies come out, the world, society changes, all that kind of stuff, and you've got to keep up, right? So many different things are going to happen, and it's just a case of continually leveling yourself up, shall we say, to take on those hurdles, right? And with that, you're hitting the ground running, right? It's not about how fast you run, because no matter how fast you run, you're just going to slam into the wall. It's about how well you can handle these obstacles, right? If you can do this, you're doing something pretty right, right? And I think the way that you do that, the way that you get to that point, is by improving your mental health, your physical health, and your psychological health. And look, I used to feel like I was better in the past. I used to feel like I was more capable. I used to feel like I was more able to take on life's problems. However, right, I think I've improved myself a lot since then. In the past, I used to drink like 10 cans of beer a day. I used to smoke weed. I used to do so much shit all the time, and I was just so chaotic with life, and I was just like stumbling through the chaos, right? And everything kind of worked itself out. Whereas now, I'm a lot more methodical with things, and I'm a lot more aware of myself and my place in the world and the world around me. So even though maybe I'm not, doing the things that I used to be doing, which was getting me down for a time and keeping me up at night, sort of going, oh, I used to do this and that and this and that, and now I just do this. Maybe I'm at that pass, right, where a new life is coming ahead of me, right? Because I've not been drinking now for a year and a half. I've not smoked weed for about 6 months, right? I'm coming to that overpass where the life changes ahead, right? And once I can overcome that, I think it's going to be similar to hitting the ground running again, like that. And obviously new challenges will come. I'll be doing a load of those all the time. There'll be another one of these, but this time it'll be easier for me to handle it because I've managed to do one before, right? I mean, I've done them before. We've all done these sort of problems before. We've all overcome a lot more than we might give ourselves credit for. Think of right now and leave in the comments something that you overcame that you completely forgot about until this moment, right? What's something that happened to you 4 years ago, 5 years ago? What's something that didn't even seem relevant until right now as I'm trying to get you to leave a comment about that sort of thing? Let me know, because I'd be interested in hearing it, because we all have things that are tough. We all have little stumbles like that, and then we always manage to find another one, right? And this one's a little bit smaller than the one before. But maybe doesn't cause as much damage, but I can throw it further, Everything has its advantages and its disadvantages. And with life, we all have certain moments where we're more, go-getter and chaotic. And sometimes we have moments where we're a little bit more subdued and methodical and routine-like. So if you want to climb this, right, the best way of doing that is to focus inwards rather than outwards, right? And if you can do that, then you can do that. So I hope that made some level of sense. Thank you very much for watching this video, everybody. I hope you managed to get something out of it. I really hope you managed to get something out of this, because it's been something that's on my mind for a while, because you see so many things about like, oh, I used to be so cringy, I can't believe I said that to that person 8 years ago, my brain's keeping me up about it at 3 AM. You see a lot of that, but you don't see a lot of, oh my God, I was so brilliant fucking 5 years ago, now I'm just a load of shite, I don't get anything done, I used to be so much more of a go-getter, I used to be so much better at life. What's happened to me? What's happened to this? You know, that, you know, I don't see get talked about nearly as much, right? So I thought I would talk about it here. So yeah, that's gonna be it from me. Take care, everybody, and bye-bye.